Got it. Awesome. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Today I have Asal here with me. She's the chief of staff at Microsoft. She's had 18 plus years of an amazing journey from finance to business management, doing customer success, product management, consulting. So a lot of different roles that she's held. Thank you so much, Asal, for taking out the time and for doing this podcast today. Um, I usually like the guests to introduce themselves in their own words. So I'll pass the mic to you and just ask you to talk a little bit about who you are personally, professionally.
Sounds great. Yeah, I'm Asal. I am currently with Microsoft, although I soon will be starting a new position. And I work in a chief of staff capacity at Microsoft. At Microsoft, we call them business management. And my new opportunity would be what we call strategy and ops, which is again similar to that chief of staff type role. And I came from, as you said, a very diverse background. I started my career in taxes. That was very niche. I was doing taxes for some very well known celebrities, founders of some of like the really large companies that you use day to day. And eventually was really interested on the business side of things and got my MBA at University of Washington in Seattle. And from there, I just wanted to explore. I wasn't ready to commit to a career like I had done with my tax career. Wanted to make sure that the next career I have is one that I really, really enjoy and I want to be in. So I moved through careers pretty quickly post MBA. I started at consulting, and then from there, I pivoted into a startup. And a startup was a great opportunity because there's not a lot of red tape there. So they allow you, if you are interested, to take on more scope. You can move around a lot easier. So I started in the professional services team because of my consulting background, doing more of our implementation, customer success type work. From there, I was working very closely with some of our product management, so pivoted a little bit into that. And I was going on a lot of pre-sales calls. So people were like, "Oh, you'll be really good at sales." So I was like, sounds great. Moved into sales. Was absolutely not for me. Cried every day for 3 months. Called my manager. They brought me back to professional services. And after that, I realized that I am the type of person who likes variety and novelty. I don't want to do the same thing over and over. The moment I'm in a career for a couple of years, starts getting boring for me. If I'm doing something over and over, that happened in tax, in consulting, in professional services. And I wanted something that I can touch all aspects of the business, from finance to change management to communication to culture. And I started learning about these chief of staff roles. And I was like, this sounds really interesting. This is kind of exactly that. No day is the same, no hour of the day is the same. And you're kind of touching everything in the business, which is what I had done throughout my career individually. So I started looking at those roles, and we can cover that. It's it's becoming more and more common, chief of staff, but it, like, even 3 years ago, it was still becoming a thing. So it's not as easy to necessarily locate them, especially if you don't know what the industry calls them, because there are different ways that people refer to them. And the role means different things to different leaders or organizations. So what it means at Microsoft is very different than Google, than a startup. And even within Microsoft, you look at the different organizations and different leaders, and they treat it very differently of their expectations and what goes into the role. So, after applying for a little bit and using my referrals and network, I was able to land this position at Microsoft, and it has been an amazing journey for almost 3 years. And I've learned so much. And now I know that this is the role for me. This is the role I was born to do, and I'm very passionate about. So I want to continue doing that and learning. And yeah, here I am.
No, awesome. I know when I first started in my corporate journey, one of my mentors, she was a chief of staff, and the very first meeting, the introductory meeting that we had, I asked her like what her day-to-day looks like, and I went in with the assumption that she just follows her manager in every meeting and just takes notes. And I confused what a personal assistant is versus, and I thought like she manages his calendar and all of that. Um, And now that I've realized it, I feel like it's a lot more like tactical work, and you do a lot more than just like the basic presentations and what other people assume that a chief of staff does. Um, and I know you mentioned like the day-to-day can be very different. Do you want to talk a little bit about what your day-to-day actually looks like and how you prepare for like the uncertainty?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, what you're saying is a very common misunderstanding. A lot of people think chief of staff is like just a higher level
Mhm.
executive assistant, business admin, but it's not. It's very different skill sets. Those roles are very, very valuable in the organization, and frankly, at my team, I could not do my job if I didn't have amazing EAs that I work with day to
Mhm.
day. And the chief of staff does work closely with the EAs because it all falls under the operations. All of your jobs are to run the organization. So there's a lot of kind of collaborations and overlap there. But chief of staff, think of it as um, if you have a leader of the organization, if that leader was the CEO of a company, so if you think of an organization, the organization that I supported at Microsoft, 800 people, if you look at my boss, you think of him as the CEO, you think of the chief of staff as the CEO of the organization. So responsible is to make sure that the organization is running. So a successful chief of staff is making sure that the leader's time is opened up so that they can focus on everything technical and managing their own leadership team, so that everything else can be run by the chief of staff and anybody else that supports them. Sometimes chief of staffs have chief of staff offices, depending on the size of the organization. Sometimes it's just with executive assistants that they work with. Sometimes they have vendors helping them. So it really depends on the scope and the size of the organization. And when I say run the organization, is everything from finance to headcount to culture to comms. I like to say it's basically everything that my boss can delegate.
Yeah.
My team is very technical. It's hardware engineering. I have zero background in anything technical. My background is completely business. So it's a very clear line that I can't go make technical decisions, but I can help make decisions on headcount and budget and culture and comms and everything else. So yes, that does include creating presentations. If we are doing something internally, if my boss is going externally to having a keynote, I will help create his presentations. I will help create his keynotes. But it also means I manage the budget for the organization. Everything from your typical morale discretionary budget to where do we spend money on vendors or hardware or whatever what you have it. Of course, I don't have the technical background to know what lab equipment we need, but I am the person who goes to the right people to collect that information and then work closely with finance to get the right approvals for us. Headcount, I work very closely again with finance or other chief of staffs above me to make sure that, hey, what our headcounts are we getting? We're going to allocate resources. How are we going to get backfill positions backfilled? Where are we going to balance between having a vendor doing the job versus an FTE doing the job? Or we have some, as you know, at Microsoft, we have other geos, we have people in Malaysia, we have people in India. So how are we going to do that geo allocation? What makes sense for our teams? Does everybody have the right scope? What is the health of the organization? Do we have the right number of managers for the size of our organization? So anything you think about that technical, like organizational health, falls under this. And then you kind of go into like other areas of like, if my boss has to send an email to the organization and announce something, or if we have town halls or, offsites, like all of that planning, both from like gathering the content and planning around it falls on me. And everything else that you think about from like a culture perspective of the organization or making the culture better or addressing employee needs and things like that. Again, I work very closely with a lot of our team. It's not a solo job, but it's the one source of truth to bring all of this together. And when you think about if somebody is creating programs for if we have done a survey and employees have raised a concern and now we want to address it, that program probably also requires communications. That program requires budget. And so now I'm there to bring, because I have that pieces of the organization, I can lead them to the right direction. I also know how my boss thinks. So when people are like, we want this, I can guide them through, hey, there, this is what he's going to ask you. This is what he's going to care about. And these are the things that you should think about. Or even setting trainings. I've set a lot of soft skills trainings that brought, presenters for our team to, when we've had budget extra or whatnot, found people to like teach them on presentation skills or psychological safety or anything that you think about. All of that falls within chief of staff. So when you say, what does a day look like?
Mhm.
I could wake up in the morning and I could be helping someone, being creative about finding budget for someone because they needed budget for something. And
Mhm.
then 2 minutes later, I'm sending an org wide email and then I'm switching into writing a keynote so my boss can go give it at some talk.
Wow, that's a lot of things that you do. I know when I became more familiar with this role, one thing that a lot of people were talking about when Anthropic started becoming big was that their CEO only has one person reporting up to him, and that is the chief of staff. And someone on Reddit said that chief of staff is like the human AI. That you know how you go to AI and you like it pulls resources from all these different websites. A chief of staff does the same thing. If and that gets me to my next question. Like, since a lot of my audience is early in career, you have had like 18 years of experience doing different things across different sizes of companies. Would you say that this role is something that is majoritively for experienced folks? Like, if someone was just graduating from college right now, would you have any advice for them? Do you think this is a role they should target or not?
I don't think this is a role that you're going to take on right out of college,
Mhm.
just because it does require a little bit of experience because you are sitting and representing a leader. Now, depending on the scope of the role, you don't need a lot of experience. If you, for example, look at a lot of startups,
Mhm.
most of them are now hiring chief of staffs.
Mhm.
But if you look at most of those startups, there are some that require more years of experience, but a lot of them are looking into that 2 to 4 years of experience
Okay.
because they actually want someone who has had a little bit of experience and but then hungry enough to come in and learn. The job is a grind. Like I would say this is not a 9 to 5 job. This is not a job that you're like out of office, I'm on vacation. In the 3 years that I've been in this job, I have never fully clocked out on vacation. I have always responded to emails. I have joined 5 a.m. calls if I had to.
Yeah.
It's not like I did it my entire vacation,
Mhm.
but I would keep an eye. If something comes in priority, I'm going to have to jump on it. Because as you said, I don't like to use the chief of staff as AI because a lot of people are like, oh, AI is going to replace chief of staff. I'm like, no, AI is helping chief of staff. I could have never done this job without AI. Like, I'm glad I started in this role when AI
Was there? Yeah.
was available because I don't think I would have succeeded
Mhm.
because you're touching so many different things that there's no human possible that can have expertise in all of those. And I'm one of the few people who have touched all of these in my past careers, but AI helps us. But it is the role that you are kind of that knowledge center of a lot of these things that keep things together. And you are the final approval for a lot of things as well. So you want to unblock the team. So it is not a 9 to 5 job. It is not a job that is for someone that is comfortable. It is uncomfortable with ambiguity because most like I am now training someone who's kind of providing support when I leave. And I have said that to this person that this job, if you expect that you know the process and you're going to follow the process, you will fail because nuance is the name of the game for this job.
Mhm.
Pretty much everything that's coming to you, it's because people come to you because they don't know who to go to or they don't have an answer. If it was a process that was well documented, they wouldn't be coming to you. So if they're coming to you, that means it's a special case and it's almost always something that's a special case. So you are going to have that every day. So you have to get very comfortable with this ambiguity of not knowing or not even knowing what's in scope for you.
Mhm.
I get emails sometimes from my boss that he gets an email. He's like, "What is this?"
Mhm.
And I haven't received that email, but I have to go figure it out because
Mhm.
his time is more valuable than trying to figure out why did he get this notification from IT of Microsoft. I can go in and try to figure out why did he get that, now what does he have to do with it.
Mhm.
And so if you that's why like it's important to have had some experience and be resourceful, but again, it's a grind. So some people say chief of staff jobs are a 2 year rotation. You come in, you do it, you learn about the organization, and you move into a different role. And in a lot of organizations, chief of staffs come in, and maybe if this was a marketing organization, they would come in, they would be a chief of staff 2 years, they would be a director of marketing.
Got it.
So that's why I think that 2 to 4 years for startups is a really sweet spot, because someone who has had some experience, they're really eager. Maybe they are somebody who's always wanted to be a founder. Now you're getting the seat in front of the founder and helping them build this. And kind of you're like a future founder. A lot of startups are looking for that mindset of like, hey, do you want to be a future founder? Do you have a couple of years of experience? Come get front seat row here,
Mhm.
and kind of get this opportunity. But then you also have people who go get an MBA, and then it's a larger organization. And people move from very different backgrounds into this role. It doesn't really, you don't have to be technical, you don't have to not be technical. We have chief of staffs at Microsoft that are extremely come from extremely technical backgrounds, and then we have ones like me that have zero technical background. So
Got it. You said something very interesting. You said it's a 2 year rotation. So would you do you think someone like there's an ideal time for someone to stay in a chief of staff role before they transition out to something else, or can that be the end goal?
so let me clarify that. So I don't think it's a 2 year rotation. A
Mhm.
lot of people say it's a 2 year rotation.
Okay.
The reason they say that it's because it's such a grind
Mhm.
that sometimes people are like, this, you can very easily get burnt out in this job. I am nonstop getting pings and emails from people with questions that pull me very different directions on top of my job. So you have to have a lot of discipline, and you have to think of you on your feet, and you have to be creative, and you have to be resourceful, because it can be a lot. And like I said, you can't really shut off. Like
Mhm.
our leaders don't really take vacation that they're not reachable.
Mhm.
And chief of staffs for those leaders operate the same way. So that can create burnout, which is why a lot of people are like, okay, this is a really good, you get a seat at the table, you see the behind the scenes and everything. You're constantly working with leaders, which is amazing learning opportunity.
Mhm.
But for some reason, some people, they feel like, okay, I don't want to do this level of grind and burnout. So
Mhm.
now that I've learned enough, I'm going to find a different position within that organization, because now I know enough. So they move into different director of this or that into the
Mhm.
organization. For me personally, I love the style of this job
Mhm.
and the fast pace and the ambiguity and the fact that I can never be fully comfortable, because every day I'm going to get a question that I don't know the answer to. For me, I don't see it as a 2 year rotation. Now, that said, in a particular organization, as a chief of staff, after 2 to 3 years, if the organization is not growing this way or that way, you might have had all the opportunities that you had to make improvements and putting processes in place. So you may get to a place that now you're repeating a lot of the same things,
Mhm.
and you may crave something different or something new. And that's when for me, like that's what I'm doing now, going into a different organization and doing the same type of strategy and operations, which is what they call over there versus business management here, doing the same type of job at a different industry. So I'm going, for example, from silicon hardware engineering to a trust and safety content management industry. So now I'm going to restart. I'm not going to restart the skill set that I've learned, but
Mhm.
I have to relearn a new industry, new processes, new organization, find my resources. So that still brings that same novelty that I seek in my career. So that's kind of the distinction of it depends on the goal that you have. It
Yeah,
absolutely can be a role that you can stay in. And I think for me personally, once I found this role, this is going to be my career. I'm not going to shift to anything outside of this strategy operations business management. This is what I want to do. For a lot of people it might be a great way to learn really fast and then move into a specific function.
understood. Oh, that's super helpful. And you said you don't have a technical background, but you're still going from a tech team to another tech team. Do you feel that was a gap? And if for everyone watching this, like, are there any specific skill sets that one should target to sort of have at least the foundational layer ready to be a chief of staff or a strategy person?
um, I always say the best operation people, which that covers chief of staff, strategy, operation, business management, admins. A really good operations person is industry agnostic
Mhm.
because you do not need to understand the industry. You don't have to understand the technical aspect. You have to know how an organization can run efficiently. In fact, I would argue the fact that I have no background in silicon engineering has helped me significantly because when people start talking and they may go get really narrow into a specific domain expertise, I can bring them back because I don't understand that. So I'm going to ask about what is the impact. They
Mhm.
may give me a technical answer and I can push back that no, that's not the impact. What's the impact to the business? So I can keep pushing them until I get that answer, which is important to leadership who may not necessarily have the same technical background as them. So I think the skill set that you need that makes you successful is what I said earlier, kind of having comfort with ambiguity, being resourceful, and be naturally curious
Mhm.
because you have to not only learn the processes and build processes, you have to learn how your leader operates, how they make decisions, because now you're kind of their twin.
Yeah.
And you have to learn the team because each team has a different culture. Each leader has a different culture. People within a team, I know exactly who are people that I need to follow up 15 times with.
Mhm.
And I know who's the person that when they give me one number, I can trust that without questioning or verification. So those are the soft skill set, I would say. And then be extremely organized because you're going to get so many things. And if you are one of those people that have unread emails in your inbox at any given point when the day ends, you're not going to be successful in this job. So have a zero inbox policy, have a plan for like when and how you're going to respond to something. You have to be able to like, you cannot put do not disturb
Mhm.
on your teams when you're a chief of staff. Like you cannot do that. You have to be available and you have to be comfortable with the context switching that happens on a minute basis in this job.
Wow. Yeah, the zero email policy, I'm not sure how many people can do that, but if you're doing that, that is hats off to you. I know how many emails one gets, typically like over 100, but that's amazing. Um, on a on a personal level, do you feel like I know you mentioned this earlier, but are you always in a state of what's coming next, or do you think you can like disassociate for like after 6 p.m. and plan for something or plan a trip? Or do you feel like it's always, I know consultants, like some of my friends who are consultants, they are in the same thing that they have had to reschedule their trips, that they can't take a lot of time off because they're working on Saturdays, they're making presentations Friday evenings. Do you think it's similar for these types of roles?
So I wouldn't say that I have switched trips or canceled plans.
Hmm.
I would say I've been available. So I am into taking my trips
Mhm.
and I have definitely taken advantage of that. I've taken multiple week-long trips throughout the
Mhm.
year. What I would say is I definitely do take care of my personal life outside of this, but do I have my phone and during a lull of afternoon on a trip after I'm sightseeing, do I take a look at my Outlook to see what's come in and then see if something is priority? Like I always tell my team in my out of office, like I'm on vacation, I'm not going to check anything. But if something comes in priority that can't wait till I'm back, mark it as high priority and text me on my phone. So
Mhm,
I'm not checking Teams messages. Like
mhm,
if people are pinging me, I'm not looking at that. I will look at my Outlook, and if someone has marked it priority, then I quickly look at that. I don't look at the other emails. So I will make sure that, like, and if somebody texts me, then I can quickly respond. And most of it hasn't required me to sit down and deliver work. A lot of it is they have a question that I'm the person who either knows the answer or can provide the approval.
mhm.
So that mark of priority, I can quickly answer them and unblock them to move on. So it's not quite that you are, working like I was a consultant. This is not consulting hours at all. Like,
Okay.
like I for sure have put in nights and weekends when it was
Mhm,
necessary. I wouldn't say I've worked every weekend, but
mhm,
a lot of Sundays, like I log in just to get ahead of the week for
mhm.
sure. You are working with leaders, and leaders are working a lot. They're responsible for a lot. So you can't really assume this is that I'm going to come in at 9 to 5 and then I'm going to shut the laptop and I'm not looking at it. And good luck, everyone, till 9 a.m. That's not
Yeah.
how it works. But you still take your vacation. I have taken advantage of, I've, made sure my leader knows that I want to work out in the morning. So a lot of times, like I'm not the person who gets in at 8. I'm a 9:30 a.m. Start time, right? So I do take care of that flexibility, but then do I maybe take a look at my emails at 7 a.m. before my workout just to make sure there's nothing priority? Absolutely. So it's a balance. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that did, that did. I think what you said, the difference between consulting, that it's not consulting hours, I think that was super helpful. Like, I was under the impression that since it's, and I'm sure a lot of people might be, that consulting is also somewhat similar. Would you say it's somewhat similar? That you get thrown onto a new project every 3, 4 months, and then you have to like figure out things that you don't know about a new company, a new industry, similar to the problems you get.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons. And a lot of people like, I will get hate for this because a lot of people are like, "Ugh, like consulting MBA, why do you like?" But I do think those things matter, and I
Mhm.
have seen better chief of staffs with those backgrounds than not those backgrounds. And the reason is what you just said. It trains your brain into that being comfortable with ambiguity. The difference is with consulting, you kind of come in, you're focused on that one project for 6 months, you're learning that industry, you're doing whatever you're doing, but you're a lot of times very high level project managing them or giving them some advice. You're not there on a day to day actually working with the people to
Yeah.
make sure it happens, whereas here you're not necessarily taking on a project that you wrap up, you move on, you never have to think about anything you do. That's going to follow you and haunt you
Yeah.
for the rest of your time at that role. So that's why it's a little bit higher stake. But I would say you're still within tech, you're an employee of tech, and I'm just focusing on tech. Of course, this role can be anywhere else as well. So I'm entitled to the same flexibility as everybody else at Microsoft. But again, this role is a leadership role because you are reporting to corporate vice presidents, EVPs, and so you have to like meet them at that same
Mhm.
level. So you can't just say, like, I'm going to operate like, another, junior, senior
Mhm.
person. You have to operate at the level that leaders are operating.
Mhm.
So it comes with a little bit of kind of like you have to learn not to get overwhelmed. Like at first it can feel overwhelming, but then you have to learn not to get overwhelmed. And you do that by prioritizing things in your personal life. For me, that's working out, traveling, making sure like I get home in time to play with my dog. So if you can find things that are outside of work, can take your mind off of work, that is how you can balance.
Understood. That's helpful. I just had one last question. Um, would you say in 2026, where at least this is what I've read, a lot of people talk about that the era of the career ladder is over, and now it's not a ladder. It's more so like how many different ladders can you touch? Do you think that's true?
Yes, I think they call it the era of peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. I think the career ladder still exists in certain industries. Like if you are a lawyer, if you're an accountant, even in engineering, I would
Mhm.
say that is a possibility. You can still do the career ladder, but with how fast things are changing and how like the way the industry has moved in every industry, not just tech, you need to be comfortable with change. And I heard this phrase from someone. They called it career portfolio
Okay.
versus like your resume.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times our resume is like, I went from this to this to this, but there's a story there, right? And trying the different things that kind of get you there. And for me, like that was the story, right? Like coming from a finance background, finding my way into consulting that brought me into tech, but then into a bigger tech,
Mhm.
and until I found where I want to be, and still is not fully ladder because I am now changing industry. So it's a
Mhm.
lateral move. And maybe then I'll even switch to something outside of chief of staff in 3 years. Who knows?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I do agree that it is the era of peaks and valleys and career portfolio. And my advice to because your audience is a lot more on that early career. A lot of the companies have opportunities. I know at Microsoft, we have that. We have a career hub, people post projects. At startups, that's so easy. At smaller companies, that's so easy. Larger companies, harder, but you can network your way to do this. Take as many stretch assignments as you can. Don't rely on the career you have, the manager you have to kind of make a progression for you. The higher you get into your career, you learn that in order for you to move up or get better opportunities, more people need to know you in a work capacity, not just a networking per se. So if you can take on stretch assignments, opportunities, somebody is taking a leave and somebody needs help, a different team, it doesn't have to be within your team. Make your interests known to your manager. Your manager's job is to help you. So if you raise to your manager that these are the things that I want to try and I'm interested, they can keep an eye. They can tell their manager to keep an eye on those opportunities and help you try them. Because multiple things can come from that. One would be that you actually really like that team and then they have an opportunity, you switch to that team and you're now moving. Two, you learn a different skill set that you can bring back to your team that can help you move up. Um, or you can say, I know for sure I don't like that, and I will not make a mistake of going to another company taking that role. So you kind of eliminate by trial. So try as much as you can. Your early career is your time to explore. And the higher you go is harder to switch your function. So the earlier in your career, people are much more forgiving. So at, for example, Microsoft, a level 61, who is like a few years out of college, you can go from finance to marketing to something else much easier than somebody at a principal level. So take advantage of that and don't be afraid. What can happen? The worst case, you hate it and you come back. I've done it.
Mhm.
So anytime you want to think about those things, think about 10 years from now, would I look back and think, should I have tried that other career because it's too late now? Or no? If the answer is you would wonder, do it.
Understood. Oh, that's super helpful. And as someone in a rotational program, I can attest to it. The fact that we get to change teams every 1 year and within 3 years get three different exposures, that's super helpful. So thank you so much, Asal, for taking out the
Awesome.
time and for sharing the advice.
No
Any
problem.
anything else that you want to share, or if people want to reach you, how can they reach you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, um, and you feel free to tag me.
Mhm.
And I guess my last advice for you as early career individuals is take risk.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to take risk because risks that you are betting on yourself have exponential payouts.
Mm.
So don't be afraid to take the risk because you don't have a lot to lose at this stage of your career.
Got it. Yeah, that's true. A lot of people worry about their image or what will happen when they're like fresh out of college. We don't have that, so definitely super helpful. Thank you so much, Asal.
Yeah.